Sabah al-Khair, good morning dear listeners. You're listening to Radio 3CR on 855 AM and Palestine Remembered with Robert Martin, Nasser Mashni and Yusuf Ahmed al-Rimawi.
Palestine Remembered is Australia's only English-language radio program that is totally dedicated to Palestine. We'd like to welcome those listening on 855 and those that will join us on podcast at 3cr.org.au.
Thanks for joining us. Stay with us and enjoy the episode.
Good morning, Robert.
Good morning, Yusuf.
And
we have Michael Shaik again here. Welcome, Michael.
Good morning.
we're lucky to have you again, Michael. Michael Shaik is a political commentator and one of the most devout supporters of Palestine in Australia and a great friend of ours. So we will discuss with Michael Jared Kushner's lame peace plan and the worship in Bahrain. I know we touched on that a couple of weeks ago, but it will be great if we get Michael's thoughts on it. And we will get to hear the reflections of one of our listeners on a TV program on Gaza last week. So, Michael, what could you tell us about the workshop in Bahrain?
Well, according to public relations, it's the Trump administration's revolutionary idea to bring peace between Israel and the Palestinians by thinking out of the box. And as part of this, there was a summit held in Bahrain a couple of weeks ago to promote economic opportunities for the Palestinians and bring foreign investment in. Now, all of the Palestinians, regardless of their political affiliations, want nothing to do with it, and they all boycotted it.
It actually was one of the few moments of total agreement among Palestinians that we've seen in the last 15 years.
Yes. So you've got to wonder, if it's supposed to be about the Palestinians and the Palestinians don't want anything to do with it, why did it go ahead? What's its real agenda? Is it really to bring peace when even its terms of reference are nothing to do, are so alien to the Palestinians? And I think, you've got to look at the historical context in which this takes place. Firstly, regarding the Trump administration, it comes at a time when it's cut off all aid to Palestinian refugees. It's recognised Jerusalem as Israel's capital. It's recognised Israeli sovereignty over the Golan Heights. It's closed the Palestinian Affairs Office in Washington, D.C. And it's
it also cut off the financial aid to the PA.
Exactly, and closed the the U.S. Affairs Office in East Jerusalem as well, and moved it into the Israeli embassy. And also regarding the Arab world, I think the thing that intrigues most people about the conference is the diversity of the people who support it. What possible program could people like Jared Kushner, El-Sisi, the dictator of Egypt, Mohammed bin Salman, El Khalifa of Bahrain, Mohammed bin Zalman of the United Zayed of the United Arab Emirates. What do they all have in common? What possible program could bring them together in this Israeli Arab peace initiative? And if you look at their background, it's a very simple equation. They're all in their way quite pious men whose loathing of democracy and the ideas of human equality are rooted in a deep commitment to hierarchical society. So for all of them, the idea of a free, independent, democratic Palestinian state, the example of that in which Jews are as good as Arabs and they live in peace and equality, is as shocking and frightening as it is to Netanyahu. Because, and I think we've got to understand, the historic defeat that the Arabs have suffered since the crushing of the Arab Spring 6 years ago. These leaders who sent representatives to Bahrain are not only expressing their flagrant total regard of the Palestinian people, but also for their own people. Because whatever compromises and deals they make with Jared Kushner and the Israelis, the Egyptian people, the Saudi people, the Jordanian people, the Syrian people, the Moroccan people are still 100% pro-Palestine, and they want nothing to do with this normalization effort.
And on this popular level, I spoke to an MP from Bahrain who is head of the anti-normalization initiative, and they spoke freely about their full support of the Palestinian aspirations, and they expressed their full embarrassment that Bahrain is hosting such a workshop, and that the name Manama, the capital of Bahrain, will be affiliated with such a shameful anti-Palestinian workshop.
Well, I mean, we've got to remember what happened in Bahrain in 2011. You know, it's a majority Shia country that's ruled by a Sunni royal family. There were peaceful, sustained and massive protests calling for more democracy, and eventually it was crushed with the aid of the Saudi military, who were invited across the bridge into the country to destroy the revolution. Remember that Australian footballer, soccer player, who was on his honeymoon in Thailand and he was arrested and he was about to be deported? He was from Bahrain. And eventually he was let out because he was totally innocent of the crime that he was committed, treason or something like that. And because there was an overwhelming case that he'll be tortured there. So those are the kind of like new friends that Israel's cultivating now. And if you look at it, it's not about bringing peace to Israel and Palestine before. It's about turning the issue of Palestine into an internal security problem so that they become like the Uyghurs of China or the Kurds of Turkey
Iran or Iraq.
Exactly.
Yeah.
An internal
Iran.
issue. So, get it off the agenda in a face-saving way so that these Arab countries can normalize their relations with Israel and get the Palestinian state idea off the agenda. And the fact that they've done it against the united opposition of their own people shows how alienated the Arab ruling classes are now from the Arab people since the defeat of the Arab Spring.
So in parallel with this official Arab position on the Palestinian issue, there is the so-called anti-imperialist powers of the Middle East, particularly the Iranian project, which is responsible of destabilization of Iraq and the destabilization and the occupation and the massacres in Syria, and also a long list of other human rights violations against their own people. But they also do the same injustice to the Palestinian issue by hijacking the Palestinian cause. So while they raise the slogans of Jerusalem and raise the slogans of resistance, they continue to butcher Iraqis, Syrians, and Palestinians of Syria. And they continue to support the situation that violates the human rights of the Palestinians in Lebanon. So here is the situation where you have two opposing streams of powers in the Middle East, one publicly puppet to the American, the other one claiming to be anti-American, two opposing streams who are at conflict with each other, but the common denominator, one thing in common they have, is that they both do damage to the Palestinian cause and to the Palestinian people in different ways.
Yeah, the only thing I disagree with is I wouldn't call them anti-imperialist powers. I'd say that Iran is a regional imperialist power and Russia is certainly a global imperialist power.
That's why I said so-called. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, so-called, yeah.
Definitely not anti-imperialist.
Yeah. Look, I mean, in a way, the Palestinians have never been so on their own. Except for the solidarity shown by people around the world. I'm talking about African Americans. I'm talking particularly about Jewish Americans who are more and more critical of America. I'm not talking about isolated voices like Norman Finkelstein anymore. There really is a generational gap there. But, there are so many countries that now look to Israel, including Australia, as the way that Australia once was and could be again. All of these authoritarian leaders like Modi, Orban, Bolsonaro, and Trump, despite their diversity, they're all 100% behind what Netanyahu's doing. And Netanyahu's always thought that the post-World War II era of the United Nations and international human rights was an historical aberration, and that he is leading these new men to a new world order. And maybe there's some truth to that. That is a basis in which he reckons he can deal with the Palestinians. He thinks he's got much more in common with Sisi and bin Salman than he does with than any of they do with the Palestinian people living in Gaza and the West Bank, for example.
So again, the Americans want to do it the other way around. They want to discuss economy before they talk politics. And maybe Robert and I in the car were talking about it. And
there's 5 major things they didn't discuss. Things as the return of the refugees, and
Jerusalem and the settlements, the 5 major topics, and also the water resources and the borders. So
no discussion at all.
No discussion of the Palestinian sovereignty. No mention of the Palestinian state. No mention of even the word Palestinian territories. You may have read the 40 pages document that was uploaded on the White House to explain the Prosperity for Peace initiative. There's no mention of a Palestinian state, and there's no mention of the right of return. Nothing political. It's all broad and vague imaginations.
It's supposed to be about Palestinian development, and it never mentions the occupation, which the World Bank, the IMF, everybody says that's the main reason that Palestinian economy is stuck in the doldrums.
No one mention of the word occupation.
Yeah. So it's a big public relations exercise. And, I think even 2 years ago, the idea of a summit of Arab countries and Jared Kushner discussing the issue of Palestine without any mention of Jerusalem.
In the absence of Palestinians.
Yes. It would be unthinkable.
No.
You just said it was a marketing ploy. Do you think it's worked?
Well, certainly not with the Palestinians.
Of course
They're
not.
not fooled. And certainly not with the Arab world.
I think they made a fool out of themselves. I mean, they look at how the world reflects on the peace plan, Kushner plan. They look at him as this incompetent boy who is trying to, come up with a solution to a conflict that is complicated and that's really
that he has no idea about.
He has no idea about.
And doesn't care either. He's very biased.
And therefore, I think they made fools out of themselves on an international level.
I note that none of the, of the Arab representatives there were no prime ministers, foreign ministers. They sent very junior functionaries along because nobody wanted to be photographed with Jared Kushner and his PowerPoint presentations, And,
I mentioned this briefly on the previous discussion that I didn't see that happening, that Qatar sent its finance minister to Bahrain, a country that they have hostility against. All of a sudden, they were divided on everything and they were united on Israel.
Yeah, that's the other thing. Like I said, the diversity of the people represented. What does Khalifa have in common? Once again, the hatred of democracy, the commitment to the status quo
and
that he does share with Saudi Arabia and Bahrain and the United Arab Emirates.
Were the Palestinians represented?
And they refused to go. I think there was one collaborator,
there were a few
who builds settlements,
Yes. It gets even better because I saw the Arabic translation on the White House website yesterday of the 40-page document, and guess what? There were language issues.
I was just going to say, was there grammar issues?
There was grammar issues.
Just for those who don't know, Yusuf is a translator and a very good one, and he's very critical when he finds errors.
I hope you don't mind me bragging about my Arabic expertise, but I did an intensive review, and let me just give you a few examples.
He's documented.
The Arabic word for prosperity was misspelled more than 70 times.
70, but they actually put the word prosperity in this thing for 40 pages.
And in every occasion it was misspelled. The Arabic word for economy was misspelled more than 60 times. The Arabic word for investment more than 50 times. And then the list goes on. There are more than 120 words that they misspelled. There are more than 10 grammatical errors. There are more than 12 punctuation issues. And this is my favorite. The Arabic word for vision, they mistranslated it as the Arabic word for dream. And I think there is a point, because the Palestinians have to be asleep to believe Kushner's plan.
That's gold. That's gold.
Now, do you reckon the reason was because that no Arab linguist with integrity refused to have anything to do with it, or do you reckon they actually got someone who actually spoke out and he deliberately put
No. I think they didn't have this quality assurance.
Right.
This is a while it might be a secondary issue.
Have you sent your resume there?
Imagine if I am the official translation.
Yeah. Fantastic.
You'll never know. We'll see. But I think this is a reflection of their lack of seriousness.
The lack of care.
The lack of care. Whatever, let's put together anything. And there's no care, there is no attention, there is no competence in handling the whole thing. So what happens in the Arabic translation is an extension to every other aspect, to the failure in the whole thing. And while this is a tiny little thing, but it is indicative to the bigger picture. And literally, I'm going to put together a report with a list of all the spelling and grammar issues. And I was approached by even outlets, media outlets in the Arab world, and they said, "Yeah, we'll publish it for you." So this is going to be my game for the next few days.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
The fact that they use the word prosperity, to me,
more than 70 times misspelled.
I mean, that's a joke.
So you're listening to Palestine Remembered on 855 AM, and our guest Michael Shaik today. Welcome again, Michael.
Good to be here.
So, Robert, I believe that we might want to touch on the Channel 10 program.
Yes, so there was a TV show. I did see it, and most of it was pretty good. There were some issues that I didn't agree with putting in, but I believe that that's what he had to do to get it on to commercial TV. It's Todd Sampson's body hack. He was originally going over there to film ambulances, and he was only supposed to be there for a few days. Ended up staying there for a month. And on the project, which is a news place, a news channel here in Melbourne, he was on there saying that he really feels for the Palestinians after being there, which is a great thing. And one of our listeners wrote us something about it, and I thought I'd read it. So this
is Ray Higgs.
Ray Higgs.
Our dear listeners.
Yeah, so we thought we would. I watched a TV program about Gaza. It was called Tom Sampson's Body Hack on Channel 10. The presenter, Todd Sampson, travelled to the Gaza Strip. He arrived during the March of Return, where to date over 28,000 people have been killed, 28,000 have been injured, and 280 have been killed in the weekly protests. Todd is brave to go into such dangerous places. He is lucky to survive the bullets, the bombs buzzing around him. Others are not so lucky. But those who live in Gaza are far, far braver, as the TV program showed. Danger is a daily thing. Only 4 hours of electricity each day impacts essential services like hospitals. Many buildings are just rubble due to the Israeli bombing. The children play in the street because there are no parks. And the Palestinian fishermen get shot at by the Israeli Navy if they venture out too far where the fish are. Israeli drones and Air Force constantly fly over, 60% unemployment rate. So many hobbling around on crutches from being shot in the legs. And you sure don't see anyone overweight. This is obviously because they don't get enough food. This brutal blockade has made Gaza a prison from hell. They are being punished by Israel for doing no wrong. The world needs to see this cruel injustice because Israel has made Gaza unlivable, a place with no hope. And so it's pretty heartfelt.
Thank you, Ray, for sending us your reflections on the program. While we might not agree on everything on the program, there are definitely things that we thought that the program producers did in purpose to maybe make it like a balanced.
I think he had to do that, but good for Channel 10 to put it on because a lot of people saw people actually getting shot, amputations, exactly how they live, and Todd Sampson couldn't believe that he was getting shot at, and he was there as a press person, and he was a fair way from the fence, but he also went on the ships for the fishing ships, and they shot at the fishing boats as well, and you could see the bullets ricocheting off the water. And so, for a guy to go over there and spend a month and immerse himself with the family and the culture there, he came back a different person. And so try and find it on the internet. Channel 10's Todd Sampson's The Body Hack.
And he was asked on the project, like you said, if that visit changed him, and if he picked a side. And he said that I came back with so much sympathy for the Palestinian people. And I guess it takes a stranger maybe 1 or 2, let's say 1 week maximum, to realize the big lie that you see in the mainstream media when it comes to the representation of the Palestinian issue. To see that these are besieged people for more than 13, 14 years now, and they have challenges on every aspect of life, mostly because of the siege, but not to mention that, the financial and electricity blackout, etc. And
the loss of family members.
And loss of family members, and no financial, very high unemployment rates, every parameter, every element in maybe anything that could go wrong is on its way to go wrong 100%. In Gaza. So in light of all that, one could only really sympathize with the people. You don't have to be Palestinian or pro-Palestinian to just sympathize with them.
It was one of the most graphic shows I've ever seen on Gaza, and having a press guy put himself on the line. So that was a good thing. And I've seen lots of shows on Gaza. This was the most in your face of how they shoot. You could hear the bullets going past him. So, scary stuff.
So thanks for your reflections, Ray. And Michael, before the end of the show, I want to touch on the riots in Israel and the Ethiopian issue. I guess the main question is Israel racist towards its own people?
Short answer is yes. Look, there's a lot of racism in police forces around the world, and I'm not excusing what happens in Australia to our Indigenous population and to African migrants at the hands of the police. I suppose the difference is that Australia's a post-colonial society, whereas Israel is a fully colonial society, and the police there are trained to brutalise non-white Indigenous people.
Even if they are Jews?
Well, so it's easily translatable to non-white immigrants, such as African, and most Israelis don't actually accept
that they're
blacks
Jews
as
equal
citizens. So, I mean, the primary victims are, of course, the Palestinians, but Jewish minorities also get a hard time, which is ironic because in a lot of cases they're some of the most hardcore anti-Palestinian people they are. In a lot of cases that's because they're rejected as Jews, and one of the ways they can prove themselves to be more Jewish when they're in the army is to show how
no mercy on the Palestinians.
Yeah.
I saw also some of the graffitis by the Falashas. Death to the Arabs, death to police. Why is it? Why us? We didn't do anything.
Exactly.
So I don't want to be judgmental and try to say I sympathize, I support, I don't support. I try to rationalize this scene and see there is police brutality in several countries, including Israel. And there are elements of, blacks versus the mainstream non-black. But also the Ethiopian Jews, like you said, they probably had to express their anti-Palestinian sentiment more than the rest to prove that they can fit in the main group. And there are several cases of more brutality by colored Jews on the checkpoints, including Arab Jews, including the Moroccan Jews, including the Yemeni Jews. I haven't lived in occupied Palestine, haven't been there, but I have read and heard so many stories of Yemenites and Moroccan and Iranian Jews being harsher than the mainstream, let's say, non-colored soldiers. at the checkpoints particularly. So I don't want to limit this issue to the Palestinian part of the story, because there is more to the story than the Palestinian element, definitely. But it is another reminder that Israel is a sick society.
Yeah, it's fascinating because you can see the same dynamics in every colonial society. I think there was a book written once about how the Irish became white when they migrated to America, and they were considered the lowest of the low in the late 19th century. But by joining the struggle against black emancipation, they gradually became accepted, as did the Italians, as did the Jews. And it's happened in Australia as well. Now, I remember Tony Abbott saying Greek Australians were a great example of how immigrants have assimilated. Now, if you go back to the 1970s, they were rubbish. Now you have Scott Morrison saying how great Chinese Australians are. They're not like Arabs and Africans and people like that. And it's like almost it's a rite of initiation that you can get into that honorary master race status but by rubbishing the people who come after you in a way, and especially rubbishing the indigenous people. There was a time when there was a Black Panther movement in Israel in the 1970s, and they were mainly made up of immigrants from the Arab world who were facing incredible discrimination, and they were in solidarity with the Palestinians, and they tried to build bridges. So it's not impossible that kind of solidarity can be built again. In fact, Rob, I once saw a fascinating interview with you with Nurat Peled Elahan, and she was talking about African migrants to Israel who were indoctrinated to be anti-Arab, and how she took them over to meet Palestinians, and they realized how much they had in common as common victims of Israeli racism and stuff like that. So there's always that possibility of solidarity, as well as, that divide and conquer strategy. That,
guys, we have 1 minute left, and there is an important guest coming to Melbourne, Michael.
Yes, Orly Noy is being brought over by the Australian Jewish Democratic Society. She's an Iranian immigrant to Israel, and she'll be talking about the challenge that Zionism presents to Oriental Jews.
On Monday, the 8th of July at 7:30, we have an intimate evening and conversation with Orly Noy and Noura Mansour, and this is at the Moroccan Soup Bar.
And also another one?
Yes, at 6:30 next Wednesday, she'll be speaking at the State Library on the topic An Iranian-Israeli Response to Zionism.
So hopefully we'll have the opportunity to speak to Orly in future episodes. I guess with this we've come to the end of this week's edition of Palestine Remembered.
Can we say thank you to Michael, most certainly. Thanks for coming.
Thank you very much.
Always pleasure to talk to you, Michael. So thank you, Michael, again. And thank you to our all listeners for listening in to another edition of Palestine Remembered. And also I want to say thank you to Ray for sending his reflections on the program on Gaza. Until we meet next Saturday, this is Robert, Yusuf and Nasser wishing you the best of time, and salam.
Hi, this is Rafif Ziada, and you're listening to 3CR, pro-Palestinian, happily proud radio.